Imagine you're out on a busy construction site, really focused on your work, and then suddenly you need, well, basic facilities. Ensuring those needs are met safely, hygienically, it's just fundamental, right? Especially on a dynamic construction job site.
Absolutely fundamental.
So welcome to this deep dive presented by Safety One Source. This is for you safety professionals, risk managers, anyone really looking to deepen their knowledge of workplace safety.
That's right.
Today we're getting into the weeds of OSHA's sanitation standard. 1926.51. Our goal, to really unpack what matters for your day-to-day. We're talking potable water, non-potable water, toilets, food handling, even temporary sleeping quarters, washing, eating areas, pest control, change rooms, all of it.
Exactly. And we're not just reading the standard itself. We'll be looking at that, of course, but also some really important interpretation letters from OSHA.
Ah, the letters. That's where it gets interesting, isn't it?
That's often where the rubber meets the road, yeah. They give crucial clarity on how these rules actually apply in the field. So we want to distill all that down into practical, actionable insights for you, the safety pros listening, so you can keep your sites compliant and, more importantly, healthy and safe.
Okay, let's jump right in. Potable water. Seems basic, but 1926.51a starts there. An adequate supply, readily available.
Right. Adequate is the key word. And it's not just about having water, it's how it's provided. Like, portable containers need to be tightly closed, have a tap.
No dipping allowed. I can see why.
Definitely. Hygiene 101. And any container for drinking water needs clear marking drinking water, and it shouldn't be used for anything else.
Makes sense. Prevent contamination.
For sure. And the common drinking cup, absolutely forbidden. If you use single-use cups, you need sanitary containers for the clean ones and, proper disposal for the used ones. It's all about stopping the spread of germs.
So what qualifies as potable? Does any tap water count?
Not necessarily. It has to meet standards. Either the local public health authority standards, or if there aren't any local ones, then the EPA's National Primary Drinking Water Regs. That's 40 CFR Part 141. You've got to verify your source meets those quality levels.
Good to know. Verification is key. Now, construction sites often have water that's definitely not for drinking, right? Like for dust control or something?
Yeah, non-potable water, Section 1926.51b covers that. Any outlets for non-potable water, maybe for industrial use, firefighting, they have to be clearly marked.
Marked how? Just a sign.
Signs, yes, but they need to meet their requirements in Subpart G, the sign and tag specs, and the sign has to state clearly that the water is unsafe for drinking, washing, or cooking. No ambiguity allowed.
So crystal clear warnings.
Absolutely. And crucially, OSHA prohibits any cross-connection, open or even potential, between potable and non-potable systems. That's a huge health hazard if non-potable water gets into the drinking supply.
Okay, let's shift to toilets. 1926.51c. This is always a big one on sites, and you mentioned the interpretation letters are key here.
They really are. The standard itself gives you Table D1. It lays out the minimum number of toilets based on employee count, like 1 for 20 or fewer workers, then the ratio increases.
And there's a urinal requirement, too, for larger crews.
Yeah, for over 20 employees, you need at least one urinal as well, unless the toilet facility itself is designed for individual use, meaning it can be locked from the inside.
What about really temporary sites, like just there for a day or two?
Even under temporary field conditions, the rule is that you still need at least one toilet facility available.
And if there's no sewer access, what are the options?
Good question. OSHA allows alternatives like privies, but they can't contaminate water sources. Also, chemical toilets, recirculating ones, combustion toilets are possibilities. But you always have to check local codes first. Some areas might prohibit certain types.
Okay. Now that mobile crew exception, that seems like it could be tricky. The rule says toilet requirements might not apply if they have transport to nearby facilities. How does OSHA define mobile?
Ah, yes. The Mertz letter from 2002 really helps here. OSHA says a mobile crew is one that moves frequently, maybe multiple times a day or even hour to hour between different job locations. Think like utility crews doing quick repairs at various spots.
So not the crew that's on the same building project for weeks or months?
Generally, no. If you're reporting to the same main site for extended periods, you're typically not considered mobile under this specific exception.
Okay, that distinction is helpful. So for those truly mobile crews, what does nearby mean for toilet access? How close is close enough?
The Mertz letter tackles that too. Nearby means prompt access. Basically, close enough so employees can get there without significant delay when they need to go.
To avoid health issues, right?
Exactly. The letter actually mentions potential adverse health effects like UTIs, kidney issues, constipation from delaying too long, so the access needs to be reasonably quick.
Is there a time limit, like a rule of thumb?
The letter suggests that generally less than 10 minutes travel time would be considered nearby. It's not a hard and fast number for every single case, but it's a useful benchmark. The goal is equivalent access to what you'd expect on a fixed site.
10 minutes. Okay, that gives safety folks something concrete to work with. What about high-rise construction? Putting toilets only on the ground floor when people are working way up high.
That came up in the NAL letter from 2005. OSHA clarified that provided means made available with prompt access. So if you're on the 15th floor and the only toilets are ground level and getting down the stairs takes, say, 15 minutes,
then they aren't really promptly accessible.
Precisely. That travel time might mean the ground floor facilities aren't sufficient for those workers. The intent is that people can use facilities when they need to. Excessive travel time defeats that purpose.
So for high-rise jobs, especially early on before lifts are in, safety managers probably need to plan for toilets on upper floors too.
That's the strong implication, yes. You have to consider the actual travel time from the work area. If it exceeds that rough 10-minute guideline, ground level only probably won't cut it.
Okay, number and access covered. What about the condition? Cleanliness matters, obviously.
Hugely, and OSHA agrees. The NOAA letter from 2006 is very clear. Unsanitary toilets do not count towards your required minimum.
So provided also means usable.
Exactly. A disgusting, unusable toilet isn't really available. Now, sanitary doesn't mean operating room sterile.
Right, it's a construction site.
But conditions that make it unusable are a violation. The NOAA letter actually points to the ANSI Z4.3 standard for servicing as a benchmark. For example, it suggests servicing a portable toilet used by up to 10 people at least weekly.
So if you have one toilet for 20 people, you'd probably need servicing maybe twice a week to keep it reasonably sanitary.
That seems like a reasonable application of the guidance, yes. Basic cleanliness and functionality are non-negotiable for compliance.
Okay, moving on. Food handling. Section 1926.51 TAG. What are the basics there?
It's fairly straightforward. Any employee food service operations have to comply with relevant local laws and health codes.
So follow the local health department rules.
Yep. And beyond that, OSHA says food service must use sound hygienic practices. Food has to be wholesome, not spoiled, and protected from contamination during prep, handling, storage, the whole process. Common sense food safety, really.
What about temporary sleeping quarters, if a job requires workers to stay on site?
If an employer provides temporary sleeping quarters, Section 1926.51E requires them to be heated, ventilated, and lighted. Basic minimums for habitable conditions.
Got it. Now, washing facilities, Section F. This seems important, especially with certain materials. When are these specifically required?
Right, 1926.51 kicks in for certain jobs. If workers are applying paints, coatings, herbicides, insecticides, or, and this is key, in any other operations where contaminants might be harmful.
Harmful contaminants. That sounds broad. How do safety pros figure that out?
That's where interpretation letters like SCHLAC from 2006 come in handy. It looked at electrical work involving things like cutting oils, conductivity enhancers, fire-stopping compounds, stuff that can irritate skin. OSHA said that phrase in other operations is meant to be broad.
So it's not just the listed examples.
Correct. The question is, could the contaminant be harmful? If yes, then washing facilities, soap and water are generally required. And the SCHLAC letter stressed checking the safety data sheet, the SDS. That's your primary tool to see if a substance is harmful.
So check the STS. If it's harmful, and maybe waterless cleaners aren't enough, you need proper washing stations.
That's the gist. And the Banford letter from 2005 really drove this home. It asked if just providing waterless hand cleaner and rags was enough for harmful contaminants. OSHA said basically no.
Well, why not? Waterless cleaners seem convenient.
They pointed back to the Field Sanitation Standards rulemaking, which found soap and water are simply more effective for removing a wide range of hazards, bacteria, chemicals, pesticides. Waterless cleaners weren't seen as an adequate substitute in those cases.
Okay, so adequate washing facilities for harmful stuff usually means soap and potable water.
Generally, yes. And there are specific letters about Portland cement, too, Ryan and Galassi. Because wet cement causes burns and dermatitis, OSHA requires clean water, non-alkaline soap, and clean towels for workers handling it.
What about those pH buffer solutions you sometimes see for concrete work?
The Ryan letter said those can be helpful, a good supplement, but they don't usually replace the need for soap and water, especially if other contaminants are around or if the buffer alone doesn't fully remove the cement. And these facilities need to be in near proximity to the work, like in a job trailer nearby.
Makes sense. Soap and water first, buffers can supplement. What about the general requirements for lavatories and showers in Section F?
Okay, so F3 covers lavatories. They need hot, cold, or tepid running water. Soap and hand drying means towels, air blower. Required in all workplaces, with exceptions for those mobile crews we discussed, or unattended locations if facilities are readily available elsewhere.
And showers.
Showers, under F4, are required when specific OSHA standards mandate them for certain hazards. If required, the ratio is generally 1 per 10 employees of each sex showering that shift. Need hot and cold water, plus body soap and clean towels provided by the employer.
So the level of washing facility depends on the hazard level and specific standards.
Okay. Eating and drinking areas section. Any restrictions there?
A very clear one. No eating or drinking in toilet rooms or areas exposed to toxic materials. Pretty basic hygiene and contamination prevention.
Simple enough. How about pests? Vermin control is Section H.
Right. For enclosed workplaces, the standard says they should be constructed and maintained to prevent rodents, insects, etc. from getting in or nesting as much as reasonably possible.
And if they do get in?
That a continuing, effective extermination program is required. Prevent first, eliminate if necessary.
Okay. Lastly, change rooms. Section I. When do these become mandatory? Change rooms are required when a specific OSHA standard mandates protective clothing because of potential toxic material contamination. If that's the case, you need change rooms with separate storage for street clothes and the contaminated work clothes.
To prevent take-home contamination.
Exactly. The Burnham letter, while focused on asbestos, illustrated this. It talked about separate clean and equipment rooms and stressed that even with HEPA vacuuming, washing facilities with soap and water were still essential.
So tied directly to required protective clothing for toxics. Now, how does all this apply to Hayes-Wilper sites, hazardous waste operations? The Wingard letter from 2011 had some clarifications.
It did. First, it said workers on a Hayes-Wilper site daily for about 4 weeks are not generally considered mobile workers for sanitation rules. Their work location is relatively fixed for that duration.
Okay, so the regular rules likely apply. What about using off-site restrooms like at nearby businesses?
OSHA doesn't explicitly require written consent from those businesses. However, the site's health and safety plan, the HASP, must address how sanitation needs will be met.
So the plan needs to be documented in the HASP, even if it involves using nearby commercial facilities.
Yes. While OSHA doesn't mandate formal written agreements for using multiple off-site places, the HASP should outline the arrangement. It needs to show adequate sanitation is planned for.
What if workers feel the off-site plan isn't adequate and request on-site facilities?
Well, OSHA doesn't dictate an employer's internal request process, but the Wingard letter reminds us workers can always file an OSHA complaint if they feel sanitation isn't adequate.
And what if the lack of facilities leads to, well, people having no choice but to relieve themselves inappropriately on-site?
The letter suggests that the employer could be held accountable in that scenario. If they failed to provide adequate facilities, leaving workers no reasonable alternative, that could be seen as allowing unsafe or unsanitary practices.
So the employer's responsibility for providing adequate sanitation on a Hayes-Wilper site is paramount and needs to be fully addressed in the HASP.
Absolutely. The HASP is the roadmap for safety on that site, and sanitation is a critical part of worker protection, especially in potentially hazardous environments.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground, from drinking water specifics to Wilper site interpretations. This deep dive into 1926.51 has been really illuminating. For the safety professionals and risk managers listening, what are the big takeaways?
I think, number one, remember that proper sanitation isn't just about checking boxes for OSHA. It's truly fundamental to protecting worker health and well-being. We've seen how detailed the requirements can be: water quality, toilet access and cleanliness, washing facilities matched to the hazard.
And those interpretation letters really add layers of understanding, don't they? They give that practical context.
They're invaluable. Understanding how OSHA interprets things like mobile crew nearby or adequate washing in real-world situations is crucial for safety pros trying to implement effective protocols. It helps bridge the gap between the regulation text and the job site reality.
So knowing these nuances helps create genuinely safer, healthier work environments. It's about mitigating risk, ensuring compliance, but ultimately it contributes to a better, more productive industry, right?
Exactly. When workers feel their basic needs are met hygienically and safely, it builds trust and supports a stronger safety culture overall.
So, a call to action for our listeners. Take a fresh look at your current work sites.
Hmm.
Think about these details we discussed. Are there sanitation provisions that maybe warrant a second look? Could access times be an issue on that high rise? Are washing facilities truly adequate for the materials being used?
And what questions do these rules and interpretations raise for your specific site challenges? We definitely encourage everyone to dig into the full standard 1926.51 and those key interpretation letters we mentioned. They really provide the complete picture.
Absolutely. Stay informed, keep digging deeper, and of course, keep tuning in to Safety One Source for more insights to help you champion workplace safety.